Right on. And I just want to wish everyone welcome on board and good afternoon and Assalamualaikum. Salam sejahtera kepada semua. I am so happy to see everyone here today. And I would like to wish good afternoon to Dr. Kang, to Doreen, to Najwa, and last but not least, our esteemed panelists. Sashi, good to see you here today, looking lovely as always. Jian, so good to be able to drag you out from your office. I know it has been really, really busy weeks for the past few weeks for you. And Shame, having to see you in the office today is really, really good. I've been following you for the past few months at least, so would be interesting to hear all of you panelists to speak today. And before we kick off our session this afternoon, may I invite Dr. Kang to perhaps share some thoughts about our session today and to give some words of wisdom. Dr. Kang, over to you.
Thank you so much, Hani. Words of wisdom, I probably have none, not old enough. I think, all right? Don't want to admit my age lah. Dian might know, but he is not entitled to reveal it, okay? Okay, jokes aside, welcome everyone. I'm glad to see everyone nice, alive, happy. It's great to be able to meet all of you online, if not face-to-face. The Future of Work webinar, this series of webinar was concocted by our unit in IMU because we were looking at the challenges of the future. What sort of challenges would happen for all of us, especially when our students graduate, because the work in the future will not be the work as of what we're doing now and of what our forefathers were working on. There are many, many challenges. So this is the opportunity for us to talk to thought leaders, industry leaders, on what are the challenges that are definitely rolling to, in our direction, and how are we going to handle that? Because obviously these challenges are not articulated in any form of curriculum just yet, but we know it's coming, okay? One of which is what we're going to talk about today. It's about social media, and it's about the role of social media and how it plays. You know, we put a lot of our own personal information out there. We do a lot of interactions in social media, but on top of that, we have HR of every company. They are out there too. They can monitor us. So the question today, which is the topic we are going to talk about, is HR, human resource unit of every company. Are they looking at social media and are they using it to filter us, especially when you are doing a job search? That was the proposal we had. That's what I think all our panelists were going to discuss. So I leave it to the very capable hands of Hani, our dear, lovely, wonderful Hani, okay, and her panelists. And I would like to welcome our panelists. We have Sashi, we have, I've lost your names up on my screen now, Sashi Aline, we have Dian, and we have Shamir. What made me panic for a short while was everyone was named Doreen Lim, you see, that's, that caused a bit of consternation on my part because I can't be calling you all Doreen Lim. Anyhow, since I've seen too many Doreen Lims on my screen right now, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to my team, the team behind this, which I rely upon every day, Doreen as well as Najwa. Without them, I cannot do anything. Okay, so I thank them. I thank the IBU team. I also thank Hani as well as the rest of our panelists and our people who are here today. And I leave it to the very good hands of Hani to please take it away. Over to you, Hani.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kang. And that was very, I think that was words of wisdom, finally. And those words actually anchored our conversation today and our discussion for the next little while until we wrap up the session. One of the things that has caught my attention and having discussion with the rest of the panelists is that there is an increased number of employers looking at social media nowadays. They're looking at social media profiles to help them making hiring decisions. I suppose it provides glimpses of the trail of thought, yeah, or how others say about the applicant itself. And we are here today to discuss the merits of having professional social media presence And we have our three panelists here who will be providing various perspectives based on their roles in the society, and the kind of work that they do with various applicants at the same time. So without much ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just briefly introduce our esteemed panelists. We have here Mr. Shame Das. Shame excuse me, Shame is with an organization called Health Equity Initiatives. It is a community-based organization committed to promoting and protecting the right to health of marginalized communities. He graduated from IMU with Bachelor of Science with honors in psychology. A mental health enthusiast and a humanitarian worker who also dabbles in emceeing. So here is Shame. Hi Shame, how are you this afternoon?
Hi, Hani. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Feeling great, actually.
Fantastic.
Looking forward for the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shami. And next we have Ms. Sashi Lim. Sashi is currently a consultant at Robert Walters Malaysia. And she specializes in the recruitment for healthcare and life sciences industry, both for local and multinational companies. She will be providing the best perspectives from the recruitment and placement industry. Hi, Sashi. Welcome to our session.
Hi, Hani. Hi, everyone.
Fantastic. Good to see you again, Sashi. And last but not least, we have Mr. Jian Fariza. Mr. Jian is currently with IMU as the Training and Organization Development Manager, a very passionate guy about lifelong learning and knowledge sharing. And he has more than 22 years of experience across spectrum of expertise, including employee engagement, performance management, change management, and leadership, among others. A seasoned guy in the space of HR and OD. Welcome on board, Jian. Good to see you today.
Thank you so much, Hani, and a very good afternoon and salam alaikum to everyone.
Waalaikumsalam. Thanks. All right. So before we kick off our session, what I have prepared for all of us participants this afternoon is a quick poll. Now, this quick poll won't take that long, and it's going to be sort of like a curveball question to all of our participants here today. And I hope that based on the answers that we will receive, we'll just kind of kick off our discussion for today. So let me just pull out the poll from here and see how things look like with the result later on. Now, let me see. I'm going to launch the poll. Are you guys ready? Launch poll. All right. Now, let's see. Very interesting. The question here is, recruiters look at personal social media of candidates as part of the screening process. Curveball question to all of you guys. And well, wow, 68% as of now. Oh, it drops. It was almost 70% says yes, they should, and now it's kind of torn in decision making between no, they should not, or I'm not sure. Your poll caught me by surprise. All right. We have a minute or so. This is very, very interesting. Very interesting. What do you think it will be, Doreen? We're not sure. Or what do you think? What do you think the result will be? Or are you going to be impartial? Okay, I'm going to end the poll right now as the number hasn't moved just as yet. We have about 86%, so that's about 46 of you who have voted. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results.
Interesting.
Interesting. And so 54% says, yeah, they should. And no, they should not, 26%. And the others were caught by surprise. You know what? Maybe I should have removed the last answer. I'm not so sure. And then they have to decide whether yes or no. So, panelists, what do you guys think of this result? Sashi, you want to take a dip?
Yeah, actually, Hani, I would say I'm surprised by the answer itself. I was actually thinking that they would answer that no, they shouldn't, for various reasons. But I am caught by surprise by the answer. That is a yes. Because relatively speaking, I think generally when you want to expose something like as private as personal social media, right? People might have a reservation like, oh no, especially when it comes to professional seekers like us. So honestly, I am surprised to see that it's a yes. But again, I think it's good to see that people are slowly opening up to the idea of possibility that social media is gonna be, part of the method or part of the tool that we will look forward for in terms of recruitment or employment, let's say. Yeah.
Yes, makes your life easier as well, so that they could be out there and just start branding themselves well or better, I would say.
Correct.
Yeah. Jian, you have something to say here?
Well, I'm like Shashi. I'm kind of surprised as well with the openness of at least the people that are here. I mean, I think one thing that we need to understand that companies are businesses, and there's cost in hiring, and for many of us, at least half of us, start to realize it's a good, understanding across the board, so is social media being a no cost or even a fraction of cost, it's a source of real-time data, of the possible candidates, it's a good source. Why not? Again, of course, there's always the other side of the coin.
Sure. All right, fantastic. Shami, what do you have to say about the result?
Yeah, thanks, Hani. I may be the black sheep here, but I actually was anticipating majority of people to say yes. Because when I was first posed this question, the first thing that came to my mind is social media can actually help us identify patterns of personality, because that's generally human beings. We have a lot of patterns. For example, extroverts who are people that are very engaging, they might link up with more people on social media, and that is something you are able to extract. Or someone who's attentive to detail or conscientious. These kind of people, for example, when the COVID vaccine came out, they wouldn't be the kind of people who say, oh, there's a vaccine, fantastic, WHO has approved. They would say, oh my God, what is this? Why are there 3 kinds? Is it pronounced Sinovac or Sinovac, So these kind of patterns would definitely be able to be extracted from social media.
Right on. I personally speaking, I'm very pleased to see there is an increased number of the answer yes to this question. I've actually posed this question on my own LinkedIn about a couple of years ago, and not many people were open at the point of time to the fact that recruiters or employers have started looking at social media as looking at patterns of behavior, is what you were saying. So I'm very pleased to see this. Although having said that, there's still some portion of our population here is still like, okay, I'm caught by this question. I'm not quite sure what to think. I got to go back and think about it a little bit more and see how I can address this question later on. But that's fine. And so this question has actually place it in a very beautiful way of going on into the next question, which I'm going to start off the discussion with Sashi. So Sashi, I came from a recruitment background at the same time many years ago, just like you, and I've enjoyed my time doing placement, because I think that's one of the most beautiful things apart from cooking for hungry people. placement is also one of the most beautiful things to do, because you're giving opportunities to people, and not just people, but to the families whom you've been placed. So I have a question for you, Sashi, and let me just take a look at my question. Now, agencies carry huge responsibilities, yeah, to present the best of candidates to clients. Please share with us why the need to review candidates' social media as part of the screening process.
Yeah.
Can you share?
Yeah. Yeah, clear. And thanks, Hani, for the question. In fact, I think, just taking in bits and pieces from what everyone have shared, right, on the thoughts about whether or not a personal social media should be a screening tool. I guess I would agree that we are no longer, first of all, in a space or an era that social media is something traditional or strange for us. I think you look at anyone, and almost like I think the entire population have a smartphone, and everybody are in one or two social media these days. So I think we have to establish the fact that a couple years ago, social media is a privilege. Maybe if you can have it, you can maintain it. But these days, it's like a necessity, especially when we're in lockdown. I guess what we do, social media is our go-to place, just like how Shamir said, right, about vaccine. You go for that, like Dian said, like businesses look at it as a resources. So I think pinching on all these small details, social media, I think right now we also have the understanding it's no longer about your Facebook or Instagram and how it started. Right now, even professional social media such as LinkedIn, right? I think all this has also become like part of our equivalent to Facebook, kind of a professional profiling. I think, most of us, when we come into an employment world, LinkedIn slowly took over our time and the kind of space that we spend. No longer, all the time in Facebook, but right now we are reaching out and connecting with people through LinkedIn as well. So how does it, kind of place around in the recruitment, or let's just say in terms of the employment world, right? I would definitely say social media is slowly becoming like a resource tool for us, readily available. And also agreeing to what Shamir have added on, it kind of adds to the personality, the flair of maybe a person, a candidate, right, an employee, an applicant that we are looking at. So from recruitment perspective, me as a recruiter, I have never thought that I would actually be looking through social medias. I didn't think of it as part of my job, because when you think about recruitment, there's job street, there's headhunting, or there's CV, right? So traditional, very basic. Little do I know that I have to be creative myself in trying to find candidates, trying to know what they do behind just a paper of resume. In fact, very funnily, I just did this couple of days ago. Never would a million year I thought. I'm recruiting for healthcare life science, right? So I'm actually working on an assignment to recruit for a medical doctor. Very professional, highly, ethical and everything. So as usual, I was in my LinkedIn, I was looking through, a list of like specialists, and I was like looking at, so I came across this medical doctor. I needed the contact urgently. So obviously I connected through LinkedIn, and I was like looking through all past experiences, where the doctor have studied before, which university he or she graduated. So when I came to the point that the description part, the doctor very kindly have put his Instagram handle in that, in the description. So I was surprised. First of all, it's a medical doctor, and then he had such a vibrant personality. You can see from the way he writes his description. When I see the Instagram, I was caught off guard again. For a second, I was like, okay. And the next hesitation is that, should I contact this doctor through Instagram, through my personal Instagram? So I was like, okay, never mind. Just try it, right? So I added the doctor on Instagram. I technically slide into his DM, like, hey, doctor, are you, I mean, professionally, of course, keeping things right. So surprisingly, it kind of had a faster turnover time for me, rather than waiting for his response through LinkedIn. Never would have I thought that I needed an Instagram handle to actually reach out for a specialist doctor, but it made the work easy. And I also get to, assess the doctor's personality, because my corporate client was looking for someone who is a bit more commercial. So they wanted the doctor, they want someone who is commercial. How am I going to know about all this, right? So I was like, okay, that's one way. So social media in this case helped me, and I was so happy. I'm like, I'm going to share this during the webinar, because it's so relevant. It's really true.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in this kind of aspect, so social media, not only, I think this is one example of LinkedIn and Instagram. I think a lot of the times we also kind of go through certain Facebook, profiling maybe. But I would just like to put a disclaimer. It's very subjective because honestly, not all job requires us to, do that extra mile of searching through professional social medias. But I think with this current, situation, I would say realistically maybe a little bit more opportunities that in regards to branding, marketing, PR related function, be it for healthcare space, right? We do still have this kind of roles. So it has helped us actually to a little bit more proactively look into, okay, if this person is looking for marketing, I want to know what kind of promotional activity this person has done before. Or let's just say if they are, applying for maybe something that's related to photography. If I take a look at the Instagram, for example, I can know, okay, how good is this person sort of? I guess, all right. So all these are additional tools for us. And I think definitely social media screening has kind of given an interesting flair in recruitment. I only see it building up from here on. I don't know what else can we discover from social media. But definitely recruiter perspective, we have been slowly also kind of like, making it a variable options for us to look into our candidates and things like, yep.
Very, very nice sharing, Sashi. I also find that, a piece of resume may not be able to tell us a lot of things about the candidate itself. And so by being a professional stalker, excuse me,
so quote unquote, right? Agree.
has given us the opportunity to understand the different layers of the candidate itself. And sometimes we may want to use this as the first line of defense, so to speak, the first line of vetting to see the suitability of a particular candidate when there is a very niche requirement. For example, how can you assess a person who's commercially viable or in the space of a certain niche profession? For example, you may not be able to understand it if just by looking at a piece of resume, and therefore social media would be another alternative venue for us to take a look at. Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, Sashi. Now, I'm just going to move on. I do have a question though to Sashi, but I'll come back to you just in a bit more. Now I'm just going to go to Dian. Coming from the perspective of an employer, Dian, when Sashi herself is, I would say, has employers as the end client. Now, coming from the perspective of the employer, why would an employer wants to take a look at to check on current employee social media? I read that somewhere, and I'm going to just put a note here. I read that somewhere, according to career builders, at least 43% of employers use social media to check on their current employees' activities. Why do we do this?
Well, yeah, I think it's quite interesting, and thank you, Honey, for that brilliant and thought-provoking questions, actually. Well, um, perhaps before we sort of deep dive into the questions, the first thought that can come to mind is that can the employees do this in first place? You know, and to answer that questions, actually, yes, they can. I mean, there has yet to be a legislation or a ruling that they cannot do this. So it's still in a gray area. Of course, we have the PDPA, but I guess PDPA, which I think come to light in Malaysia around November 2013, specifically mention about the usage, the commercial usage of that collected or gathered data. So it's slightly different, So then now back to the questions. The questions are why are these companies are checking on the current employees, social media, and perhaps like you mentioned from the company's perspective, it's all about the business, and more importantly is actually it's about the goodwill of the companies, and then when we say goodwill, these are the intangible assets of a company. These tangible assets can be consist of the brand name, a customer base, intellectual properties, and many more, or even the people actually that you have within the company. So, so having said that, I mean, it's so much important, and especially in this digital age where informations are readily available, accessible at real time, you know, and with what we've seen in the world that if you're not managing this goodwill, it can make you, become great or go bust at the same time. We've seen businesses become millionaire overnight because of a viral content. And at the same time, we can
Yes.
see businesses go down in the drain overnight because of an adverse content, you know. And so it is apparent, it is essential that the companies put a much more focus or attention to the goodwill of the company. So having the accessibility to look into the employees' social media will actually give them sort of a reflection or an immediate information rather of what the company's goodwill from the real world perspective, and from in out kind of perspective. You see, you have the outside in perspective. Now this is an in out perspective, and a lot of time this in out perspective is what people from outside are looking before. For example, for potential candidates, for example, if they find an adverse comments or feedback in the social media, respective of any platform, if they were being headhunted by, for example, by Shashi, and then Shashi was saying, "Oh, hey, you know what? I am looking for this medical doctor," and this medical doctor, perhaps, I'm sure they will actually Google up, or at least, or went into the IMU's Facebook or Instagram or whatever platforms that we have, and try to actually learn more a bit about us. Because I think in recruiting, there's always that relation. It's not just the candidate for the company, but the company also, looking for the candidate. So it's two-way sort of a relationship. So if the candidate finds that it's not appealing from the inside people, to be part of the organization or companies, why would I want? Unless the offer, I mean, of course, you have that push and pull factors. Consider, but then again, it's an indication. And so from the business perspective, companies are making it really, really important to, have a sort of not a stalking kind of thing, but this is just a constant check, you know, of,
It's just a
that,
replacement of word, Jan.
oh, yeah. Well, I don't mean it in any adverse way or, negative way, but again, so that we can actually know or find out where do we stand in the eyes of our employees. I mean, besides having that annual or
Right.
twice a year that engagement survey and all that,
Mm.
and sometimes the social media, the beauty of it is sometimes it can be a very specific issues or real time, or that on that particular time issues, sort of kind of a situation. So it's if we become if the management of the company become very proactive about it, then definitely we can manage it upfront. I
Sure.
mean, take IMU. I mean, we have been in the business for the last 29 years. I think next year is our 30th year. It's going to be a big celebration, and along the way we have acquired all these accolades, awards. We are Stara 6, what you call MQA, self-accredited, the QS star, and these are not built overnight. But as I mentioned early on, with social media, this can go bust in overnight. So
By viral news, yeah?
exactly.
Untruth viral news.
Untrue, exactly. And then so it is, I think it's what we call preventive measures, or prevention is a better cure, is it, rather than, I don't know what's the saying, I forgot. Help me out here. So these are sort of a preventive measures, or that any companies can put in place.
Sure, very, very interesting that you put it in such perspective because, you know, a couple of years ago, I know of a client, is an organization in the telecommunication industry. What they do is that the CEO has insisted that all of the top management, you know, the GMs and the managers and all that, every morning what they need to do, and there is a certain KPI, even I don't know why they put it this way, but I can understand where he came from. Their task is only this, very early in the morning, that they need to look up for any indicators of social media activities that mention the name of the company.
Oh yes, oh yes. And I mean, I fortunate enough, I've been in organizations that actually prior to IMU that's actually quite concerned about that. I mean, I was in an American organization, and you know Yelp. I don't know whether you're
Yep,
Yelp.
yes,
It's
yes.
actually a very powerful social media tool in
That's
US.
right. That's right.
And being a company that is US based, we have one. I don't even think it's an adverse. It's just, you know, a sort of a speculation,
Yeah.
and we treat it like the whole building on fire.
It's a risk management factor.
Exactly. That's how serious we took it, you know. And we even go back to the Yelp and see whether the star rating actually increased or not, you know. And you know,
Seriously.
and being a person that looked after the region side before, I mean, it becomes part of my responsibility also to manage that. So I think it depends on how companies perceive
Agree.
the importance of it. No doubt
Agree.
that, you know, when an employee sign in into a company, you actually sort of sign an agreement that, according to many of the company's handbook, that you ought to be, you know, portray a certain professional's behavior. And many
Yes.
companies nowadays also have that social media guidelines or even policies in place.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and I think as we become a bit more matured society when it comes to digital citizenship, sort of, you know, what that's being coined by Microsoft. I think we are putting this tool, this medium, into a good use, I guess. Hopefully.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope so too, because it cannot be any other way but. Thanks so much, Jan. Very, very, I would say, very good perspective, and very interesting perspective, actually, coming from the employer perspective. You know, just having said that, it gives me some thoughts about the next question that I may have to Shami. Shami, I know that you work a lot with in the space of mental wellness, and due to this enhanced lockdown and everything, people are just getting restless, and where else to go? Just like Sashi said, where else but social media, right? So all of us will be posting our breakfast lah, our cats, our dogs, you know, our jogging, whatever. But this is also the go-to place to let off steam, you know, to share thoughts, for example, and all that. So what is your perspective when someone gets onto their social media and having to manage that? Because some of the social media, they usually use it for something personal, and sometimes the boundary isn't clear anymore. It's a very fine line, and if you post up something wrong, and then the employer would come in and say, "Alamak, you know, this is not the kind of employee that I would like to have, and I'm going to have a conversation with him the next day." What do you think? We're looking at the other side of the fence now, Shami. Thoughts?
Thanks, honey. Always seems like I'm on the other side, huh? From the pole. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, because I just want to also address that. I feel like the country or the society and the whole world has reached a state of emotional exhaustion, you know, due to pandemic. And that has definitely led to an increase in mental health issues. You know, we look at the terrifying, for the lack of a better word, chain reaction created by the pandemic, you know, loss of income, you cannot pay bills, food is not there. And even for children and students, they're moving to online platforms with technical issues, lack of devices, and heck, look at us, we're doing this webinar online, you know? So all these issues has definitely created an increase in stress and anxiety, you know, fueled by uncertainty and also the inability to cope with the challenges at hand. So coming back to your question, right, I have two thoughts on it. One being that social media is a very important outlet for expression. I was just reading 2 days ago about a study on online expression of emotion. So they found that in the past, things posted used to have a positive valence, you know, meaning a lot of encouragement, motivational things, jokes and all. But since the pandemic has started, that scale has completely been balanced and, you know, negative emotions have come up. So in context, negative emotions are things that don't make you feel good, like, you know, fear, anger, nervousness. So these kind of things have come up. And if you look at it from the pandemic, right, there has been reduced face-to-face interactions. The dynamics of social contact has changed tremendously. So outlets to express emotions that are not pleasant, and these emotions often come with a lot of impulsivity and the need to react. You know, you have a bad day at work, you're like, I need to go and tell my friend, oh wait, he's in Johor, I'm in Selangor, right? So what do I do? So you go to social media.
Yes.
And you know, even for those with mental health symptoms, yes, you know, a lot of things have come online. We have telemedicine, teletherapy in about 70% of the countries. But for them to actually take it, the uptake is not that high. So these people who are already vulnerable, where else are they going to turn to? Something that is accessible, engaging, because there will be some reaction, you know, there's that angry reaction, celebrate, all kinds of reaction, and quite simply cathartic. Social media. So one very important point is that it's a crucial outlet for expression. The other point I wanted to bring is the lack of social contact. So I think we need to acknowledge that we human beings, we have a need for connection, interaction, and belonging. So social media gives us this opportunity, you know, where we communicate with others, and we are in various communities, you know, from the LGBTQ community, pet lovers, even single mothers on the internet. So there's these different things that we're part of. But bottom line is we're able to socialize and we're able to converse, have online dialogue. So given that the pandemic has increased the need for connection, these platforms provide that. So the CDC, right, the Centers for Disease Control, they did mention something about coping during the pandemic. They, of course, the usual things, healthy eating, look for accurate news and stuff like that. But one thing they mentioned was to reconnect with friends and family. Why? You know, this helps us feel that we're all in this together. And is that not what we all want? To know that despite all the struggles across the globe, we are one. And I feel that social media provides that you know, like on LinkedIn, when someone posts, oh, I've been retrenched and I'm looking for a new job, you notice now that everybody's on the bandwagon. Oh, PM me, give them emotional support. Everybody's that. So yeah, those are the 2 points.
Yeah, having said that, Shami, I really like to think that we will be socially responsible human beings when we use our social media. Having said that, there will be others who think that, hey, you know what, this is my social media, I'll post whatever I want. If they don't like the real me, then, you know, go fly kite. And this will be a big problem for folks like Sashi. And then we have Dian coming from the employer's perspective and reading all this, you know, outbursts and all that, and say that, oh my God, this is bad. Sashi, I've got a curveball question for you. Now, after listening to Shami's thoughts, you know, this is what we should have, you know, why we are using social media as a connector to other human beings, the social connection. We all need that. Otherwise, then we'll be, you know, so feeling so disconnect. And this is one of the human element, is to feel socially acceptable. And I also think that social media has also given us that instant gratification to know how our friends and connection feel about what we are going through, for example. Now, still keeping to your role as as having the mandate from clients, your end clients, can you please share with us your approach, even methodology, if you have, to make sure that your review of such kind of social media does not influence your decision making? Because remember, we're doing this as part of the vetting system. Can you share how do you manage this?
Yeah. I guess first of all, it's definitely something interesting, right? And very subjective, because I can personally resonate to it as well. And I've seen it happening. I've seen, like LinkedIn, especially in this pandemic, I think various posting has come up, like not only about job, but people losing job, people requesting for a job, people appreciating or kind of like venting their frustration about, the employers and everything. So you can see everything. And social media being a platform that is free, and fortunate enough, we are still, in Malaysia, and we do have that freedom of speech to a certain extent, right? I think we utilize that to a certain point. But I also would like to, take a step back and see, because right now, yes, we are caught in this pandemic situation, but there also, a light at the end of the tunnel that we will come out of this, right? So I'm just thinking about the relevancy of dwelling too much, in taking the pandemic in a whole account to judge a person's personal social media journey, whatever the person is currently posting. Is it only for the sake of, as a reaction to the pandemic, that the person is behaving such way, or from the start of the person's social media, maybe back in 2000 or 2010, has the person been always like this, for example? So I think, right, at this point, as a recruiter, I think it's always good to do several, like a care step, for example, like assess the situation, because I'm pretty sure a lot of us are feeling that frustration to a certain level similarly. So is this person is the only person that's venting, day and night, this bombarding everybody, being ridiculous, or is the person actually sharing similar feelings like you and I think we all have a fair share of dispute. We have certain frustration that we can't name it here, but towards people around us, to governing or whatever it is. So I think, right, as a recruiter, even as an employer, I think we have to be a bit understanding, to take several steps back to see, is this situation normal, first of all? If it's not, then is this person sharing similarities of how he or she is venting the social media across people around me or even myself? So I think, with that being said, as a recruiter, I think from my perspective, it will give me kind of like an average calculation or expectation on how the person is usually behaving. But I won't deny that definitely pandemic has kind of forced us to show some of our ugly sides. But at the same time, right, I would really think on normal circumstances, whether or not this is actually applicable. But by saying that, also pandemic might not go away from us. I don't know until when. That's another story. So I would say, if you think that the person is a little bit too negative right now for whatever reason, maybe try to assess the person from another angle. Maybe try to throw some other question. If you think that the person is already cracking under the pressure, maybe social media is part of the venting venue. Okay, maybe let me evaluate how is this person going to react if I, were in another situation, or try to assess from other perspectives. Because as recruiters, as employers, I'm pretty sure we are creative. We don't just assess from one angle. We have to, assess from multiple angles. So I would say, take it with a pinch of salt, give a benefit of doubt for the person. Do a little bit more work. Unfortunately, I think from our side, we have to be a bit more understanding.
Very interesting. I have a question. I have a couple of questions that came in through the chat box here. This came from Sri Ganesh Janathanan. I hope I've made justice to the name, Sri Ganesh. I think this question I'm going to pose to you, Sashi. Very, very interesting question. It says here, there was a potential candidate, and in bracket, in fact, a perfect one, okay, of mine, who is quite active in social media. However, recently there were a lot of negative postings from him towards the government, and probably due to how the pandemic is management. His question is this: should I ignore his expression and just concentrate on the skills, or will I be making a mistake if he is hired? Share your thoughts. maybe we can hear from you first, and then I'd like to ask this question to Jan at the same time, from the employer perspective. Thoughts?
Yeah. I think from my end, I would echo back what I have, maybe perhaps shared a little bit earlier. Yes, right now, in fact, it's a perfect candidate. Oh my God, that's a dream to find a perfect candidate. That's one. But keeping that aside, not letting it judge your, maybe cloud your judgment, I think definitely it's a point to take note, because I think it also speaks in terms of how the person reacts, right, when there's a stress, and how the person would portray. I do not know what is the job for or what is the responsibility. So it's very, very subjective. But I think to answer Sri Ganesh's question, right, I wouldn't say to ignore that. I would say take it with a second thought. Maybe you would like to understand, from a future employer's perspective on your future employee, what would be the reason, or why is he or she is actually venting out in that way, and maybe thoroughly think about it. Is this person's venting is relevant to your job, or is just, just like I said, a situational thing? So I think without knowing exactly what is this job for and what is the company or whatever it is, right, it's very hard for me to provide an answer. But I would say if it gives you a peace of mind, maybe just try to understand the candidate or your applicant a little bit more, try to see. And I think, right, to just close it off, all employment hiring comes with a risk. I think we will never know until the person comes into the job, whether or not they pass probation. That's another question. So I think this really, really requires a lot of your other, judgments as well, just apart from, being on paper. Yeah, I guess that would be from my perspective. Yeah.
Right on. We also know that recruitment isn't just exactly sitting down and having that interview. There will be a few assessments at the same time, depending on the kind of role that this person comes in with. And some of the organization, for a fact, I know that they run assessment based on value-based. Whether the candidates' life or work values are aligned to the organization's values and belief at the same time. I also know that some of the recruitment process also involve in behavioral questions. For example, how they see things from various perspectives, and then there will be a panel of discussions for the recruitment itself, to making sure that the hiring is based on non-judgmental, non-biased approaches. Yeah. So Jen, as promised, I have this fantastic question for you. Same thing, but coming from the employer's perspective, what do you think? I know from the fact that you've done a lot of OD work, you've done a lot of HR from spectrum to spectrum. Share us your thoughts about this perfect candidate, and yet you're seeing something strange on the postings.
Yeah. Well, I think some bits and pieces of it that we have discussed just now, like what Shashi mentioned. I mean, it's a dream to find a perfect candidate, but then again, we need to clearly define what does it mean by perfect candidates. With the advancement of what we call strategic recruitment, methodology or process in Malaysia. I mean, you employ used to be just an aptitude assessment and all that, but now it expand into profiling. Even the companies actually employ what we call onboarding interview. Where they actually invited the candidates, the selected candidate or shortlisted candidates, to be part of the organization for a certain period of time, and then only decide. But so there are many factors that we need to consider first, rather than reacting to the situation. Like what Shashi mentioned. But I think this is where, as I mentioned earlier on, the maturity of our society or people, or even the potential candidate or potential employee, that they need to be aware. Both sides needs to be aware. No doubt that many that we have faced throughout this pandemic are all unprecedented, and we can cry foul about it probably last year. But there ought to be a certain maturity that we have learned from it, and cope with it, and have that coping mechanism in place from both ends, either the individuals or the companies as well, on how we manage this. And perhaps not to jump the gun, like Sashi mentioned, you have to go back to your checklist, I guess. You know, what are your priorities? You know, I mean, perfect candidate doesn't come along that often, but then what's your priority? And what will be that job profile requires this candidate to be, you know? I mean, if you need to find somebody just that focus on technical expertise, irrespective of the what you call the antics of the candidates, that will be the, then you will hire this person. But if you see that this person needs to be in a leadership role in the future, you know, something like this can actually raise a flag. May not be a red flag, but give you a caution you. And like Sashi mentioned, take that additional steps, or and check further, spend that time, and we try to minimize the risk rather. I mean, the risk is always there, but mitigate it and minimize it, I guess. Hope that's bring that some perspective.
Nice, nice. Yeah, we cannot just be quickly judgmental over certain posts. We need to be more understanding, I would say, in why the reason why they do what they do. And I think that fits in nicely to the a question that is being posed, or rather sharing just a question running in my mind, says guest number 8 here. I'm just going to read it out. How sure if the person's character or personality is reflected exactly as they are in social media as what the company assume that's how they are in reality, unless they give the candidate a chance? I think for guest 8, both Sashi and Jian has answered them from both perspectives, as a recruiter as well as an employer. And what I've picked up from both of them is that we have to be human first, trying to understand why they do what they do. I hope guest number 8, both panelists have answered you. And Sri Ganesh, thanks so much again for your question. For our participants today, feel free to pose any question at all. If you do have any question, please write them down in the chat box, and I'll be very happy to read out for our esteemed panelists. I'm moving on to Shame. Shame, you work a lot in the space of non-profit or third sector, and this is the displaced segment of the society in our country. It's kind of tough. They want to be on social media, they might not be able to do so. Some of them, based from our conversation, we know that there are quite a number of them who are professionals as well. How do you think they can use social media better in order to help them, in positioning themselves, for example, or gaining trust in their ability to be able to work out a living in this country? So that's for you, Shame.
Thanks, Hani. Yeah, so just for context for the audience, so I work with refugees and asylum seekers, and my organization works specifically with those who are mentally ill, but we also have links to the community and we work collaboratively. Back to your question, Hani, I think the one main thing social media has the power to do, and it's something that we have seen, is advocacy. Like, for example, the white flag campaigns, the hashtag Kita Jaga Kita, these things are all driven by the powerful force of social media. So I think for this group of people that even we work with, I think even they in their own communities, the Myanmars, the Sri Lankans, Afghans, Pakistanis, they all have their Facebook pages where they advocate via art. Wow. They advocate via media. Yeah, they have their own like newspaper or journal where they advocate in their own language. So of course, there's this certain restraint because they are in a country where they are not fully acknowledged, but they are doing their advocacy. And I think for us being Malaysians and advocates and people who are slightly more privileged, definitely we should do what we can to learn first about them and then support them, because social media is so powerful. I think that's simply the conclusion that we have been coming to again and again today.
Wow, very, very powerful. What else? What else I would be curious about? how they position themselves in social media. Out of curiosity, how do they position themselves in terms of, putting out their profile out there?
So, well, for Facebook and Instagram, they just have one just like us. And because nobody's going to know you're a refugee, they might think like, oh, you're an expatriate. There's this Afghan lady, a very beautiful lady, so that's fine. But for things like LinkedIn and all, like I was speaking to the panelists earlier at one something, many of the refugees actually are professionals. I've had this individual, this Iranian gentleman who's 54 years. So before he fled Iran, he told me that he was a professor in physics. And now he's just so helpless, and the ego in him, his words, because he speaks English very fluently, he says the ego is so painful because now he's selling carpets. And he has a LinkedIn profile, he does share physics related posts, but there's only a certain extent to which he can engage, because if a recruiter were to approach him, they are not allowed to hire him legally because he's a refugee in Malaysia.
Right, that's painful.
Yeah, that's very painful. So I think the way they position themselves is also very strategic for their safety. But yeah, I think there's this disparity, like, more personal things like Facebook and Instagram is just like normal, but things like LinkedIn, where things are a bit more professional, there's a lot of restraint. So he might put graduated from XX university in Iran openly because that's fine. But he might not put, let's say, looking for a job right now, because those kind of things are very.
Okay. Wow. You learn something new every day. My goodness. And I'm sure there is more of like him within our society. Yeah, somebody who was contributing, coming here, and finding themselves facing challenges in making that living, just because of the condition that they're in, and the economic environment that they're in, political environment, and things like that. Thanks so much, Shami. We certainly have a lot more discussion about this later on, because I think this is where the discussion around social media, the use of social media to make hiring decision comes into place. I have a couple more questions for you, Shami, but I'm eager to ask this particular next question to Sashi. Sashi, I know for a fact that we've talked about this, how recruiters, for example, would take a look at social media. Obviously, you've worked a lot on LinkedIn to farm, or rather to search for that candidate on behalf of clients. So I've got this question for you, and out of curiosity, when do you make a judgment based on social media when you start vetting through? When do you make that judgment, a judgment call to say that, you know what, this is not it? When exactly is the point when you make that decision making?
I guess this is another question that is again very subjective, when it comes to vetting people's profile, because what might seem acceptable to me might not be for the others. So I think, right, that's the relevance of, making a judgment call, because if I think that, okay, maybe the person has been posting negatively twice, then it's still okay. But some people would think that if the person has posted negatively once, then there's no go for me. So I think it comes down to that tolerance, that balance that we are looking for. Honestly speaking, from my end, I really tend to dive a lot more deeper than just the surface. Maybe it's just I'm a psychology graduate as well, so maybe that's just a part of me that always try to ask the why, how, and who question kind of benefits me at sometimes, but sometimes I just walk away with even more questions. But I think just to strike that balance, right? I guess really look into the importance. I think we have touched about this also, the priority. If I'm recruiting for a role, I would focus entirely, what is the main objective of this role? Is this person, personality is really something that would, make or break it. Honestly speaking, if I, echoing what Dian said, if it's a very technical role, I would actually say that personal ventings and things like that might not cause any harm. I wouldn't say, it won't cause any, but who am I to judge, right? Versus if I'm looking for someone who is like doing marketing or branding, like an influencer, for example, obviously what the person puts out there, it's going to bite them back at one point. So am I going to be representing this kind of candidates? I would rather not, because I wouldn't want the employer to think that, did you even go through what the person have been doing out there, right? Are you aware that this person is in certain anti-campaign or whatever it is, for example? Like, are you aware about this? So I think that also speaks my credential as a recruiter. So definitely assessing. So I think my judgment call would come into place in putting the client's importance first. What is the role about? If I do see more pros than cons, honestly, I'm just going to send it, the profile across, or my summary across, because I cannot find a ideal unicorn candidate. They don't exist, unfortunately. So if they are 70%, 60%, as a recruiter, I'm going to try my luck. So I think definitely in terms of that judgment call, I think we need a balance, and it's case-to-case basis, role basis, and everything else.
Right on, right on. You know, here I'm as you're sharing your point. I was just thinking that now during pandemic, you're still recruiting for medical doctors, for example. It is not going to help if you're looking at a profile of a potential medical doctor and this person is an anti-vaxxer, for example, where
right.
That's
the purpose.
It's not going to look good from that lens, yeah?
Correct. Yeah, definitely.
Wow. Okay, thanks so much. Jen, I've got a burning question for you. A couple of years ago, I was, not a couple of years ago, a few years ago, I was also doing some placement for some client. And one of these clients insisted that we ask for an access to all of our potential candidates' social media. And obviously, not only that I turned down this client by saying a firm no, and I told him in no specific terms that we should be meddling into other people's passwords. But that's me. Who am I to say, right? Just like Sashi said, who am I to say? But coming from the employer's perspective, why do you think that there's some who wants to dwell into this, and why?
Well, for many of the reasons that we have talked about actually early on, but I guess if we looked at it from the legal perspective, I mean, like I said, there's no clear law or rules or regulations that actually governing this. So it's at what we call on willingness basis. So it is, if it is one that has been set as the criteria of recruitment process for an organization or company, then again it is up to the candidate to see whether that they will agree to it or not. If they don't, then immediately it won't be an immediate fit then, but then again, it goes back to the understanding of using the social media as a tool, I guess. If it's you can use this as an appropriate tool, or is it an adverse tool? So of course, if I'm on the recruitment side and I'm asking that, and suddenly say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's my personal space," and I don't intend to share it, then of course that's give you some indications that the candidate is taken back by that. Then it should be one of the consideration. Why do I need to consider you then? Because eventually, right now, I think it become more apparent. When we talk about this, I think Shami is more the authority on this. That work-life balance. I mean, last time we can compartmentalize that work is work, personal is personal. Nowadays, with the evolutions of technology and all that, I think it has somehow rather blended in, and what reflected in your personal may, or a lot of times, also reflected in the professional side of it. And I think that's one of the main reason why recruiters or companies are looking into social medias more and more nowadays. Yeah.
I see the perspective from you there is similar to mine as well. I know for a fact that there was another organization who would want to pay for the social media account. For example, opening up a LinkedIn, and they say you cannot have your own personal account. We will pay for your account.
Yeah.
The reason being is that they want to make sure that all of the postings align to what the social media policy is. So there's also a gray area between, between the personal space versus what
And
is the rightful portion of what the company can say, anything. And I thought that was very interesting, because this was happening about 2 years ago. So 2 years forward on later, everybody has some sort of social media, like TikTok and all that. And I thought that was very, very interesting. I've got a couple more questions coming in here, dear esteemed panelists. Now, there is a question from Abhirami Krishnan. And Abhirami asked this: if the candidate that we are considering doesn't post anything on his or her social media, does it considered a minus point? Any one of you wants to pick up this question?
I think maybe from my perspective as well, right? Because I'm like the venting person, right? The venting person. I think in a way, I would say, honestly, it doesn't really matter, because who are we to say that, hey, you, everybody must post on social media because that's the trend. I think we come back to the freedom of, being able to express. So I honestly do not see it as a, kind of a minus point if he or she does not post in social media. I think we have established that social media is an additional resources or tool, but it's not like a must-have, at least not in this era just yet. So I think it's completely fine, if you are not active in social media.
Okay, I hope that Sashi has answered you, Abhirami.
May I add to that a little bit?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Well, to a certain extent, I agree with Shashi. But I guess, if you're looking from the company standpoint, or even a recruiter standpoint, where I was before, to a certain extent, I think it's good to ask. I think there's no harm asking the candidate why you don't have social media, because nowadays social media has become a necessity, I guess, and then you see kids with, children, a child, 4 or 5 years old has a social media nowadays, so I think it's a good questions to ask and see what the candidate actually reflect on it, and then that sometimes could bring some light to your hiring decisions, I guess.
Interesting, very interesting proposition you put there, Dian. And I think what you've just said resonates with me, based from my past experience as well, on how to position oneself into the market when there's so many people out there who's looking for a job. We are going to touch, I believe, the 1 million mark by end of this year. Of unemployability. Right now, we're close to 800,000, where fresh graduates make up about 200 over 1,000 per year, contributing to the beautiful statistics of unemployability in Malaysia. It used to be 3.1. Now it has climbed to close to 5%. I am not quite sure where we are heading this year, seriously, but I know the number will increase. I've got a question here from Samuel. Samuel is asking this question, and I think this is very interesting. As a healthcare student, we are always reminded to maintain our professionalism, both offline and online. Was wondering, will future employers also judge us based on our social media posts made quite some time ago, say 5 or 10 years ago, when we were still in the process of adapting to adulthood? So I'm wondering, Samuel, whether have you gotten stuck somewhere in social media that morning after of, pizza and Coke kind of night? Is this the reason why you're asking? I will reserve this question just for a bit to both Sashi and Jan, and I'm going to focus on Shame. Shame, I understand again that you are also, you know, work in the space of humanitarian, in the humanitarian space. And again, as I mentioned, you know, we tend to use social media as a space to vent off, to let off steam, to share, and hoping for the instant reaction from our family and friends or network whatsoever. So what is your tips, perhaps if you want to, if you can share with all of us here on best practice to use social media so that we don't get to answer Samuel's question, you know, 5-10 years ago, oh my God, that pizza and Coke night was really havoc and is there for another 100 years. What's your tips?
Yeah, thanks, Hani. And also, Samuel, when the moment I read your question, I was like, oh my God, I was thinking of certain posts I made 5 years ago and thinking if I deleted it, which I will go and do it. I think from the, I think just a little bit to the employer's perspective of it, I think also a lot of employers have acknowledged that there is growth. And, you know, 5-10 years ago is really long. If you say the post is maybe the beginning of COVID, I would still consider it, you know, okay, quite recent. But if you are 25 years old, 5 to 10 years ago, you are 20 years old, you know, barely would be considered mature in that sense. So I think definitely that sense of growth. I'm defending myself, actually. No, no, I'm kidding.
That's a good one. Go ahead.
So for best practices, right, I always encourage people to, when you have certain emotions, you know, like I was sharing certain emotions that are so impulsive and you feel the need to vent, it's better off that you sit, you reflect, you know, you scream, you do anything you need to vent, because social media, you know, like it says, it's social and it's media. You never know what you put out there is going to come back and bite you. And not just only for career, it might hurt someone that you're, no, honey, this is not to me, this is to the public. No, but in all honesty, though, because you don't know what are you posting, it's going to hurt someone, you know, whether you're advocating for someone, if you say something against the government, per se, that you don't really mean, or when you feel something for a friend and then you post it out. So it doesn't always work that way. Yes, the avenue is there, but how you use it, you need to be really careful. So I would advise you to take a few minutes, breathe, process the entire experience, and then you decide. Because sometimes 2 to 3 minutes can make the biggest difference of what you decide to post on a public platform. You know, yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you for the justification. You know, I think it's fine. I remember getting on LinkedIn since 2008, and I think I've grown since then, 2008, to what I've posted right now. I also think that maturity plays a lot of role in decision making when we put out our sharing out there. You know, for example, we didn't have TikTok way back when. TikTok only exists in our space for what, about 2 years and some. And I thought the first time when I saw TikTokers do their dance, right, and I was thinking, oh my God, you can be my grandfather and you're dancing those kind of dance. So I thought that was really, really cute. Now, thanks, Shami. I really, really appreciate that. Now, Sashi, coming back to you. Any tips on best practices on what to do and what not to do on social media for our participants?
Okay, I guess, you know, also embarking a little bit on the question earlier as well. I think definitely social media, our account will be with us from the moment we started until whenever, right? So I think apart from all the justification that we were trying to explore earlier, but I guess relevantly for everybody, we kind of post according to our life at that time, and that's how we transition. To say the least, right? And I hope it also adds on to a point to what the question was saying earlier as well, because it's honestly not that wise to judge based on what you have posted previously as well, because
sure.
you grew up of it and your situation was different back then. So right now, if you were to ask me, you know, on the question, what is best to post, what not best to post, I think to a certain aspect, I would agree to what Shamir said, because I think social media is a tool, it's out there, it's a venue that everybody can have an access if you put it as public, right? Even if you put it as a private, there might be certain ways that your friend's friend or, you know, whoever that can view it. So I think when you decide to post on something, just look into the relevance of you posting at that very time. Why are you venting, or why are you posting? What is the relevance of posting at that time? But honestly speaking, as a recruiter, I think I still believe in freedom for everybody to express however they wish to, and what not to post and what to post. I would say go back to the idea of that specific platform. For example, if it's LinkedIn versus Instagram, obviously LinkedIn is a little bit more professional. You wouldn't want to be posting your weekend, you know, woohoo parties in your LinkedIn saying that I had so much fun, I had a work-life balance. I think that probably not be appropriate to be posting in LinkedIn versus in Instagram. You're free, you have stories, even if you have TikTok or whatever it is, right? I think do look back to that platform that you are posting, go according to the relevance. Yes, it's true that, you know, employers are starting to be a bit more proactive in looking into social media, but I think that shouldn't just, you know, cut us down from the little fun that we have as we grow along. I mean, you know, we are transitioning, we are, you know, embarking on the digitalization. So I would just say, look into the appropriate platform that you're posting. If you have kept that platform to be, for example, certain people also use Instagram as their profile, right, portfolio for maybe photographies or video. You wouldn't want to be posting something that is, like I said, anti or a bit negative, right? If you already think it as a safe space for you to post for your future works. So just be mindful about it. I think at this point, we can just say what to do, what not to do, but honestly, we can never control it. So I think being mindful about the platform, who is the audience of your platform, at that time would probably a bit more appropriate as well. Yeah.
And perhaps locking down the profile would be good as well. Especially on Facebook, we can always select the type of audience who will be able to take a look at our, you know, crazy posts sometimes. That's why I say to my friends or my LinkedIn connection, sometimes they found me on Facebook. My perspective is that LinkedIn is where I put out all my professional work and all that, but Facebook is where I post all my makan pictures, you know, my cats, you know, my granddaughters. That's got nothing to do with anything that is professional. And I don't want that to be clouding some people's perspective by saying that, hey, you know what, this is, you know, some of the thoughts that they have. So Facebook to me is my own personal space. But that's me. Dian, share with us on policy making when we look at social media nowadays. You know, we cannot run away from any of our employees to not have social media presence. What sort of policy or guideline, I would say, that you've seen before that has guided organizations to make sure that you know, certain behaviors are anchored in to protect employers from you know, getting into hot soup, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think that with any evolutions, I mean, there's always a learning curve, and there are times that learning curve will become very steep. And I think it's the same with this social media, dealing with it. I think the advancement of it, the involvement, how it's being assimilated to our personal or even professional life, it's tremendous. I mean, it's crazy, you know. And I think, and because of the impact of it, as we mentioned earlier, I mean, what it can do to an individual or even to organizations, you know, there ought to be a law, or rather a rule, or perhaps guidelines that actually many companies nowadays, or if not all, has put a certain, you know, measures in place. I mean, we heard it from even that stated as social media guidelines, or or IT policies, and how, this, when we talk social media, it's also inclusive of emails as well, you see, and how do it comes back, it boils back to the intention of the organizations or companies on protecting their goodwill, you see. The brand names is at stake, and this is a going concern, a continuous going concern in every organizations, in every companies. Yeah. So I think it's just about time, perhaps. I mean, we always, mirroring ourselves to the Western side of the world and looking how they are reacting to this, and perhaps it can be different because, cultural perspective, we need to
Right
take
on.
that into account as well.
Right on.
And we need to understand the maturity level of our people, and a lot of times that, I mean, echoing what Shashi mentioned earlier on, or Shamis actually mentioned earlier on, all these are, with this evolution, there are skills and knowledge needs to be acquired, to achieve that maturity level, so we need to make it apparent, we need to make it relevant. And in fact, Microsoft has a huge what you call movement on digital citizenship. Basically what it says is how to create a community that, it's a what you call digital savvy to a certain extent. So it's a, perhaps it becoming a more rather more important requirement nowadays.
To have that certain guideline, yeah. Would you say that it would be wise for candidates, and we have all young participants here, our young participants here, to take heed of this next question that I have for you. Do you think that would be relevant or wise for candidates to ask about social media policy or guideline that the company that they're going in have? What do you think?
Given the rate that we are going, it's going to be part and parcel of the companies everywhere in the world. I mean, I know there are companies that haven't had yet such policy in place, but I think 99% has it, so it's nothing. I mean, it's not from the other side to consider, but it's, you need to react to how the social media will affect you rather,
Right.
What are the steps that you need to learn, or skills that you need to acquire, or awareness, or maturity level that you need to be in managing your social media. I mean, of course, it goes back to what we mentioned about the, if Shami had posted something, 5 years ago, late 90s, somewhere near IMU, then this goes back to the maturity of people like Shashi, on how you assess the candidate.
Interesting.
What requirements are you looking at, is it? So there has to be a balance in both, I guess. And
right
for
on.
the candidate, yeah.
Right. I think this is where two parties need to understand the requirement. One, the employer will be looking at, taking care of the goodwill of the organization itself. And this is where new, fresh candidates would have to learn the new skills of asking questions about the policy or guideline of the organization that they're going in. For example, I'm just quickly sharing before I go to Shami and we try to wrap up the session for today. I know of a friend who is very, very active on LinkedIn with his live show. So his live show is lively, and he has created his own brand of his based from his live show. So he's quite well known, and then he landed a job. That is where his vetting session got put into a hole for a few weeks because the organization could not find anywhere in their social media policy and guideline about having onboarded an employee who is very, very popular on social media. Because he said, I will stop. Anyway, he said that I will stop if the policy says I can't, but I will continue if they give me specifically a certain guideline on how I can, continue with my live show. So after a while, I found out that they have come to terms that he will not bad mouthing his new employer. So there's an additional, or I would say some addendum to his contract, and he said fine, I'll sign it, and he continues to have his live show. And I think and the funny thing was they found him through his live show.
Yeah. I think that's part of the what we call the learning process. I think, for many companies, if you employ social media as one of your resources or tools, that you would actually find out that beforehand, then that will actually contribute to your decision making process. But if you
Yeah.
don't do that, then you find out later. Then
Yes.
I guess it boils down to the fact that whether you still want this person to be part of the organization, how does this person will actually reflect the organization, and whether it brings benefits to you, so
Yes,
right,
yes.
so you have to look at it from a different angle, and on that context per se, try to find the benefits, how try to find the win-win situation, how both parties can actually, uh, perhaps you can ask the the employees with the live shows to promote
Yeah.
the company's
Yes,
product,
yes, you'd be
brand,
very
product.
good branding, yeah, for the organization,
Exactly.
because he has like gazillion followers, and he was quite concerned, but he said, but I need the job more than I need my live show. So I thought that was kind of sad if you had to let the live show goes on, but I'm very happy to hear that all works out well. So he's happy, employee is happy. Never mind that they had to sign off an addendum
I
to
think it's
all of
about,
this.
yeah, it's about aligning the aspirations of both the company
Yes,
and the
yes, I
employee.
suppose so. I suppose so. Shame, one last bit that I have for you. I actually found some of your postings all the way back to 2018. I thought that was really, really interesting. That comes to the next question, and we have like 3 minutes to go. So I hope that I can quickly capture this question by Kishan Kumar, because I think this would be quite interesting for you to kind of, get a gist of things going. When it comes to recruiting employees, normally experienced job seekers or past working experiences, I guess it might be the gold standard for employers, or so I thought, he said, compared to new grads. So does social media possibly give new grads an edge compared to the rest? Remember, I found you, long way back, 2018 and all that, some of your last posting, you're very active, that's what I'm saying. So as a fresh grad, does social media possibly give new grads an edge compared to those who are not? What do you think? What do you think?
I think it sort of reinstates a balance. So, I mean, obviously, there's no black or white answer, but the people who've been in the field, they've always had this advantage of experience. I have experience, I know how things work, and that actually makes a difference, because these kind of people, they know how to adapt to company culture, they know how HR processes work, they know how to work in a team, they know how to lead a team. But in this idea of social media and fresh grads having an advantage, I would say definitely a slight advantage, because if I may put it, although I'm not a fresh grad anymore, we definitely have, because we grew up with social media. We explored, we played with memes, videos, TikToks, and then we realized that the power of social media is so much more. So definitely we can, but I wouldn't say it's a disadvantage to the non-fresh grads, because social media is something that you can learn and you can adapt to your own style. There is no right way of doing it. And I think many of us would agree that even the one you saw on TikTok, right? The one that could be your grandfather. So older people tend to have that that charisma that younger people don't have. When someone young does something on social media, they're like, another Justin Bieber, But when someone older does it, you're like, oh wow, that's very charismatic. Oh wow. So it goes both ways.
I think that was a beautiful response and a beautiful wrap up to what we've been discussing since 2 o'clock today. based on what we have gathered in this session with the discussion with our three esteemed panelists, we all know that the social media will not go away anytime soon. It will be used again and again, and I think it will be used extensively moving forward, you know, looking at how the world is going and how younger and younger our population is going as well. And so with that, I thank you so much, Sashi, Jian, Shamir, and all of our participants today who actually stick around since 2 o'clock. And I'm very pleased to see that the numbers hasn't really dropped. And we've got some really lively questions coming in, tough questions to all of our panelists. And I'm going to end up our session here today. We are right on the dot at 3:30. And I suppose this is a very good time to all of you to switch on your camera so that I think Doreen or Najwa can capture all our lovely poses for posterity. I will stop the recording.